Hello, I'm Mark Baer, your host for the YourTown television program. My guest, Susan Shillinglaw, the National Steinbeck Center, the director.
Thank you, Mark.
Hello there.
Hello, it's lovely to be here as always.
Okay, well, we've got big stuff to cover. We've got the Steinbeck Festival coming up.
Yes.
So let's go. Tell me what's happening.
Well, this festival starts actually Thursday night. We have a film by Amy Wu on women in agriculture Thursday night, and then the festival itself starts Friday on the peninsula. So we're having a tour of the 11th Street Cottage where Steinbeck worked and struggled and tried to become a writer, still owned by the Steinbeck family, and then the Trotter Galleries, which has a wonderful display of Steinbeck memorabilia as well as paintings of artists that he knew. And then we're going to have talks at the Hopkins Marine Station on Friday, and on Saturday the festival goes to Salinas. So we'll have talks and tours in Salinas, and then that's true of Sunday too. And another highlight is Western Stage is doing a musical of Mice and Men.
Oh, wow.
On Saturday night. It's free.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're coming up on the 20-year anniversary.
Coming up on the 20-year anniversary of the National Steinbeck Center. So we're looking for more hoopla in June to celebrate that. So it's the 37th year of the National Steinbeck Festival and the 20th year of the center, and the 50th anniversary of Steinbeck's death this year. So It's a year full of sort of landmarks. And I think that the fact that the Steinbeck Center has been open for 20 years in Salinas is a real milestone. And it's, I think, an occasion to re-examine our purpose and our identity and our mission in the community. So we've been thinking about that. So we're going to celebrate and reflect at the same time throughout June. One way we're going to celebrate is that the center will be free the week of June 25th, right around in there. And we're going to have 20% discounts in the store. And we're going to have a talk that I'm going to give on Steinbeck in his 20s. So we're going to focus on 20s. So lots of things that are 20s. So we'll have other celebrations in the third week of June. So I think that it's also an occasion to rethink what the Steinbeck exhibit is like. Mm-hmm. Because any exhibit that's 20 years old that hasn't been, refreshed is in need of being refreshed, redesigned, rethought. So I think we have to make the exhibits clearer, the sense of why we're visiting the National Steinbeck Center. Why does Steinbeck remain relevant? Why does it begin with the East of Eden exhibit? Why are those books that he wrote in the late 1930s, Indubious Battle of Mice and Men and The Grapes of Wrath, still so current and relevant and forceful and timely? So it's a time to reflect.
And it's important that they are period pieces so we can look at them as period pieces, but we do that at peril, because you can't look at conditions then and conditions now. They're applications, and how do you use those books as modern application? And I think that's maybe part of where you're going.
Definitely. I just wrote a little piece for the Steinbeck Newsletter, which came out yesterday. We publish a newsletter 3 or 4 times a year. And I had written a piece when The Grapes of Wrath turned 75, a sort of whimsical piece, because I just finished a book on The Grapes of Wrath and I was weary, and then I was asked to write something about The Grapes of Wrath when it turned 75, and I had nothing else to say. I just finished this book. And so I wrote a piece, the campaigns were heating up, and I wrote a piece called Ma Jode for President, which talked about Ma Jode's virtues and how they would be virtuous in any woman who ran for president. Of course, I was thinking of Hillary Clinton. And the Washington Post actually published it. So I just reissued it in the new newsletter, because I think that some of the virtues that Ma Jode exhibits in The Grapes of Wrath And the sense of the survival of women and the pluck of women and the sense of honesty and integrity and somebody who's poor speaking up for a kind of common good. Those are all things we need to kind of re-examine and think about. And so Ma Jode, as a figure of integrity, a figure who believes so fiercely in the common good and knows what it is, that we, the people, need to survive. And I think that today, you know, the meaning of the common good is something that's debated and that we need to come back to.
What is
how
the
are
common
we in
wheel?
this
What is
together?
the common wheel? Yeah.
Exactly.
And well, before we move on, Steinbeck's Women is coming up. So you've segued into that. Let's talk about that a bit.
Well, the theme of the 37th annual Steinbeck Festival is the women of Steinbeck's world. And this theme was selected last year. And of course, the issues of women become more central to the public dialogue in the past year, have become more central. And so my intention was not just to discuss women characters like Ma Jode and her strength, so that we're just not just analyzing books, but we're also looking at women's role in the community and in history at that time. So women he knew and women who were public figures. So, for instance, he knew Eleanor Roosevelt to some extent. She defended the Grapes of Wrath. She wrote about it and how important and compassionate a book it was. And he knew Dorothea Lange. He met her after both of them were touring California and recording their impressions, Dorothea Lange with her camera and Steinbeck with his pen. But they met, and she influenced his world. He very much wanted to help her publish her book of photographs. He was surrounded by strong women, strong, forceful, independent, clever, intelligent women. His agents were women. He had very strong wives, 3 of them. There was a group in Carmel, Monterey, that were women that supported him, and very artistic, creative, a poet in Carmel and others, and a strike organizer who was a woman, Carolyn Decker, who he used as the model for In Dubious Battle. So I think that sometimes the women in his books might be seen just as they're just wives and they're not very strong and assertive, some of his short stories. But he tends to write about how women were viewed in society. So you look at the social roles they played. And I think if you step back from the books, you also see how important strong women were to his own sense of himself and what was important in the world. And then step back another step and you see how important so many voices like Eleanor Roosevelt's and Dorothea Lange's, how important they were to the culture at large. And so it's a way to say, you know, women's voices have been important, and let's bring those to the surface and really focus on that sense of how women were important in the culture and to Steinbeck himself.
And then we have the community read coming up again. Tobias Wolff, so
yes,
I'm going to let you, that's pretty fabulous.
We have lots of outreach programs coming up. So the Steinbeck Festival this weekend, and then June, our 20th anniversary, and then in the fall we're going to do a community read. And so we have, the Steinbeck Center has had 2 big reads with sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts in the last 2 years. So we've read Sunstone and Shadows, 20 Mexican short stories, and then Citizen, which is a book about race in America. And this book is a community read, partly supported by the Arts Council of Monterey. And it's really the purpose is to get people to read together, to read a book where we all can discuss some of the issues that are significant in this book. And This Boy's Life by Tobias Wolff.
So who's selected this, by the way?
Actually, it was selected by Eric Mora. Well, it was selected by all of us, the whole team.
It's such an interesting book to pick.
Eric Mora, the marketing director of the National, he loved the book. And we all kind of read the descriptions on the website from the National Endowment for the Arts, which supports the big read. But we chose This Boy's Life as a community read because of course we don't know if we got the grant yet for the big read, the national grant. So, but we have been so delighted with the last two big reads that we decided that we'd definitely sponsor a community read, whether or not we get the grant at the national level or not. So we are doing the community read, and Tobias Wolff has agreed to come to the peninsula and give talks. So that's going to be exciting because he's.
Tell the audience a little bit about who he is and
well,
what this book is.
This boy's life. First, why the book is so, I think, urgent today. It's about single families. It's about a mother raising her son. It's about displacement because the mother has to flee from a bad situation and relocate, and so it's about that whole displacement. It's about acting out. It's about adolescent anger and angst. It's about father-son relationships, and he's a kid who had a lot of issues. He's an at-risk youth, if you're thinking about, Rancho Cielo or their programs. And he does a lot of stuff that is bad, but yet he ends up as director of creative writing at Stanford. So, it's inspirational, and that he turned out okay, but yet it's a book about a very honest, very compassionate book about his relationship with his mother.
This is a nonfiction book.
It's a nonfiction. Yes. It's a memoir.
Yes.
And it's just a really wonderful memoir, and one of the classics, I think, of the genre.
Well, it's so startling because it just shows that you can have, against all odds,
exactly,
that something good can turn out of chaos, and it's such a vivid book, and it's such a disturbing book, and it's such an articulate. He was able to articulate adolescence in a way that's kind of rare.
Yeah,
this is a very rare book, and it's a very shocking book, and
yes.
Yet it's watching somebody develop a sense of self, which he did. It's
all very true. That's well put.
Yeah, what a great thing. So, how old is he now? He's not particularly old.
I think he's probably in his late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, he's someone who seems forever young in my mind.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
No, he's got a wonderful, buoyant spirit. I was at a Hemingway conference with him several years ago, and he just was so friendly and open and attended all the sessions. He's really a wonderful man. So he'll give a couple of talks on the peninsula. So one on the peninsula and one in Salinas. So we're excited to have him and have him talk about the book.
So among your many things that you're doing, you've been teaching at Ollie.
Yes.
Here, which I'm a big Ollie fan, and
me too. I love it.
It's one of the big luxuries here.
It is
in Monterey, and you did Joan Didion in Slouching Towards Bethlehem. Talk about that course a bit.
That was a course in creative nonfiction, which I also teach at San Jose State. So I just chose some texts that and recommended some texts. But we started with I think we started the course with Joan Didion. But I have taught it also at San Jose State. But I love rereading it, rereading an era which has now become sort of an era we reflect on and look back on, and it's historical. I was too close to it when I first read the book that it seemed like happening now, although I read it in the 70s, and but it's just such great prose, and she writes with such force and vitality. I love Joan Didion's writing.
Yeah.
So everybody in the class, loved it, and actually it was well timed because right after we read the book, the documentary
just
came out on Joan Didion.
And,
so on
and
her
that's
life.
On Showtime.
By her nephew.
What is it? Netflix, Showtime? I want people to watch this.
I don't remember, but it's really well done, and it was done by her nephew. So
yeah, her nephew,
and she's written great books about loss, The Year of Magical Thinking, and what's the other one about her daughter? But they're beautiful memoirs. So she writes with great, I think, but great intensity.
She makes it look easy.
She makes it look easy. Yeah,
Yeah.
she does make it.
Beware of any writing that looks easy. It's
Well,
not.
Yeah, she's somebody to emulate. So yeah.
Yeah. So, and now you're teaching again too. So just when they thought you were out, you're back.
Well,
everywhere.
I teach one semester at San Jose State, so I
Yeah.
am retired, but we can go back in what's called FERPing, which is a word that only those who teach in the Cal State system understand, but it just means that you retire and then you can still teach for 5 years, half-time if you wish.
Uh-huh.
So.
And then, so this in our remaining, we've just got a couple minutes left, and you're talking about kind of rethinking the Steinbeck legacy, and it just seems more relevant than ever in a time that in a time of social justice where it's easy to, in other words, what we don't want to happen is say Grapes of Wrath become a period piece.
Right.
It's easy to feel good about social justice then and be blind to it now, and it's making the now visible through the lens of that past, and how you do that's going to be the trick.
I just showed a little film we had a history slam. Tim Thomas and I kind of co-sponsored a history slam in Monterey last weekend, and they were all 15-minute presentations, and one was a film about Julia Platt. And what I liked about the film was Julia Platt was mayor of Pacific Grove, and so it was an 8-minute film about her life, but took out sort of 3 themes, like why does Julia Platt matter to us? She was a kind of quirky lady, but it was like 3 themes that she highlighted and then came back to at the end. Be bold, commit yourself to something, be engaged in your community. And I think what we have to do is tease out for Steinbeck these themes that are really important today when we think about how to become a citizen, how to be a citizen, what is the common good. But I think, Steinbeck was always empathetic. He always cared about other people or imagined the sufferings of other people. So what does it mean to step in somebody else's shoes, to walk for a while in somebody else's shoes? What does it mean, I think, what does the common good mean, that whole idea of the common good? What does it mean to try to understand another person, to truly understand another person? And, what does it mean to be an American, a citizen of this country, a citizen of the world? I mean, I think that he really cared about patriotism and citizenship and the whole and community. So, those messages aren't quite as clear-cut as I want them, but that's what we're going to kind of choose 3 messages to kind of focus on for the 20th anniversary and really think, okay, what is it about Steinbeck that makes him so relevant and important?
Because it's not about nostalgia, it's about the now.
It is about the now.
Okay,
Exactly.
I'm going to leave us there.
Okay.
I'm Mark Baer. I'm with Susan Shillinglaw of the National Steinbeck Center. You're watching YourTown Television, and we'll be back. Thank you.